Hi, my name is Marissa Katz, and my project is on the effect of musical instruments on the environment. Musical instruments have always been viewed as not only a deliverer of art, but an art piece itself. Instruments can date back hundreds of years ago and can carry with it a great deal of history. However, in today's age, climate change is a critical issue, and an important factor that has progressed climate change is deforestation. Many instruments are made of now illegal woods from endangered trees, and the creation of musical instruments has played a significant impact on the deforestation of certain trees. In addition, many musicians are finding their instruments being confiscated due to their instruments being made from illegal woods and/or having parts made from illegal materials. While instruments do have a certain beauty and art behind them, we must keep in mind of where these instruments are coming from and the impact that musical instruments have on the environment. Musical instruments can vary in the type of wood used to create them. The most common types of tone woods used are walnut, cedar, spruce, ebony, mahogany, maple, boxwood, willow, rosewood, and pernambuco heartwood, which is used for bows. The wood used in stringed instruments is divided into the wood used for the frame boards and the wood used for the soundboards. The type of wood used for the frame of a stringed instrument can vary depending on the maker of the violin and the intended quality of the instrument. In addition, certain types of woods are used for different parts of an instrument. According to the violin site, the back, ribs, neck, and scroll are usually made of maple, while spruce is used for the top, blocks, and linings. In addition, ebony is used for the fingerboard, pegs, tailpiece, and end pin. In some cases, boxwood can be used as a substitute for ebony due to it being an easier wood to find. Today, many violin luthiers are using North American broadleaf maple. If aged properly, the North American broadleaf maple wood can create an instrument with a wonderful sound and tone. In 1973, many countries came together and created an agreement called the Convention of International Trade of Endangered Species, or CITES. CITES contains three different portions. The first portion is Appendix 1, which includes the most endangered species. The species represented in Appendix 1 has the most restriction on international trade. The second portion, Appendix 2, contains species that have a risk of extinction but are not currently at risk of extinction. The species found in Appendix 2 are closely monitored and regulated but are not in as much danger as those species in Appendix 1. The final portion of CITES contains species that a certain country has requested to be regulated in order to help preserve that species. On January 2, 2017, CITES updated the regulation and added all true rosewoods to the Appendix 2 list. The Brazilian rosewood, which is commonly used for woodwind instruments and guitar, was added to the Appendix 1 list on June 11, 1992. The Brazilian rosewood is one of the most restricted woods that is on the Appendix 1 list. In order to travel with an item that contains Brazilian rosewood, one must have an export permit. Many musicians, especially guitarists, have trouble traveling across international borders as a result. Even if the instrument was made prior to June 11, 1992, one must show documentation that they obtained the instrument before June 11, 1992. On top of this, one must pay a processing fee and wait 2 to 3 months for the processing to take place in order to acquire a pre-convention certificate, which will allow one to travel across borders with an item. In the case of this project, an instrument that is made of or contains Brazilian rosewood. In addition to CITES, there is also the IUCN, or the International Union for Conservation of Nature. The IUCN deals with global environmental issues and publishes the IUCN Red List of Threatened Species. The Red List of Threatened Species includes 3 categories: critically endangered, and vulnerable. Those species that fall into the critically endangered category are at a high risk of extinction. The species that fall into the endangered are not critically endangered but may face extinction in the near future, and those in the vulnerable category are not endangered but may face extinction eventually. The IUCN also makes assessments on species which include near threatened, conservative dependent, data deficient, and least concerned. In addition to the IUCN and CITES, the U.S. has the Lacey Act, which is a law that bans trafficking of illegal wildlife. In 2008, the Lacey Act got amended to include plants as well. Currently, many trees that instruments are being made out of are on the endangered list. The ebony, brown, and macassar tree are right now listed as vulnerable on the IUCN's Red List, while the Gabon ebony is endangered and the mun is critically endangered. The African and Honduran mahogany is listed as vulnerable and the Cuban mahogany is endangered. In addition, the IUCN lists the Brazilian, East Indian, Madagascar, and Siamese redwood as vulnerable and the Burmese as endangered. Lastly, the African and Claro walnut is listed as vulnerable and the Peruvian is endangered. While all of these trees were listed under the IUCN, CITES has its own list into different categories as well. Currently, the Madagascar ebony is listed under Appendix 2 in addition to the Cuban, Honduran, and Mexican mahogany. The Madagascar and Yucatan rosewood falls into Appendix 3, Siamese and Honduran into Appendix 2, and the Brazilian, which is commonly used for instruments, is into Appendix 1. For the best-sounding stringed instruments, older wood has been preferred. Old-growth trees are able to grow slowly, which overall will help an instrument open up and sound better. The density of the grain, the speed of propagation, the elasticity versus the absorptive properties of the wood, and the frequencies are all important factors that play a part in how an instrument will sound and are all dependent on the wood used and the age and how the wood has been aged. However, the trees that were being made for instruments were cut down through clear cutting, which is clearing out an entire forest of trees at once and is the least environmentally friendly way of cutting down a large group of trees. Clear cutting is a leading cause of soil erosion, which is one of the biggest environmental problems faced today, and in addition removes vital organisms from the ecosystem. Not only has clear cutting affected the environment, but has also had an effect on the instruments itself. Timber companies have replaced old growth trees with new growth trees in now nutrient-poor soil. Since the old growth trees have been growing for centuries, the soil loses much of its nutrients due to the clear cutting. As a result, instruments that are made from the wood obtained from the new growth trees in the nutrient-poor soil are not able to produce as well of a sound as those from despite the fact that climate change and deforestation is a serious issue in today's age and has been for the past few decades. The majority of the music and instrument industry has not caught up with modern-day adjustment to climate change, despite the necessary efforts needed. However, some adjustments have been made, especially within guitar making. In 1996, Gibson, a famous guitar company, started incorporating wood that had been sustainably harvested by the nonprofit Forest Stewardship Council, or the FSC. 10 years later, nearly 42% of the wood used to make their electric guitars came from FSC-certified sources, and planned by 2012 to have 80% of their wood used from FSC-certified sources. In addition, guitar companies Martin, Fender, and Gibson have teamed up with Greenspace, an environmental organization, to create the Greenspace Music Coalition to promote and change logging practices. The group first made its initial focus on Sitka spruce trees, which is commonly used for guitars and piano soundboards. Greenspace Music Coalition's goal is to develop a more sustainable forest mechanism for wood that is used for instruments in addition to educating the public. As resources start becoming less available, luthiers are turning to alternative options for wood. One option that has already been explored to replace Brazilian rosewood is Indian rosewood. However, Indian rosewood has started to decrease in numbers as well. In addition, Pernambuco heartwood, which is used to make violin, viola, and cello bows, is protected and illegal to export out of Brazil due to the decline in trees. Luthiers are going to be forced into finding an alternative material to replace Pernambuco heartwood in the near future as a result of deforestation. According to Dana Borgaus, a master guitar luthier, there is a noticeable difference between a Brazilian rosewood and an Indian rosewood guitar. Borgaus claims, quote, that a Brazilian rosewood guitar has a ringy, mildly metallic tone with even lows, mids, and highs, and a slightly wet or reverby finish. He states, when I tap a set, I like to hear a gong and a ping at the same time with good sustain, unquote. While I am personally not a guitarist, I am able to hear a difference between the Brazilian rosewood and the Indian. However, it is not a big difference. The Brazilian rosewood guitar has a more open sound to it in comparison to the Indian rosewood guitar. The instrument seems to be easier to play since there is more of a roundness to the sound. However, if one were to play a Brazilian rosewood guitar and an Indian rosewood guitar, and I was not aware which one was which, I would probably not be able to identify which one was which. Talking to Stephen Katz, a classical guitarist and music educator, also my father, he stated that even though he owns a rosewood guitar, he would not be able to tell a difference between an Indian and Brazilian rosewood guitar. In addition, he recommends using koa wood, which is a more sustainable replacement for both the rosewoods. Future guitar buyers should definitely consider purchasing either an Indian rosewood guitar or an alternative wood that has less of an impact on the environment. While there is a slight difference in sound, the future of our planet is more important than a slight variance in the sound of a guitar. The guitar that can be heard early in the video is a guitar that has a cedar top and an Indian rosewood back and sides. The difference in this guitar is that it's not made of Brazilian rosewood. In addition to having the Indian rosewood, it is also made out of a substitute material of cedar, which is also better for the environment. In the upcoming video, the guitarist will show a difference between an Indian rosewood guitar and a Brazilian rosewood guitar, using the exact same models for both, except having different woods.
Exact same guitar, exact same specs, but one of them has Brazilian and one of them has East Indian rosewood. What we're going to do is play the Taylor 814 CE. Sitka spruce top, advanced performance bracing with the relief route, 1 3/4 nut, same scale length, same mahogany neck with a standard carve, same uniquely voiced bracing for the 814 grand auditorium size body. But the only difference in these two guitars is that this one here in my right hand has Brazilian rosewood back and sides, and this one here in my left hand has East Indian rosewood back and sides. So, I'm going to let you be the judge, and I'm going to play the 814 CE Brazilian rosewood versus the 814 CE with East Indian rosewood, so you can judge for yourself if Brazilian rosewood is indeed better than East Indian rosewood. Let's give them a play.
While my project is centered around the woods used to make musical instruments and the impact of these woods on the environment, there is still more to look into beyond this. For instance, the issue of ivory used for musical instruments is a huge problem that exists today regarding poaching and the loss of wildlife, as well as traveling across borders with an instrument that contains ivory. In addition, cane reeds for saxophones and other woodwinds or brass instruments raises some questions as well. Another topic to look into is how metals are extracted for brass instruments and the effect that metal extraction has on the environment, specifically for these instruments. While the topic of environmental sustainability and music and its instruments is not a common topic, there has been research done that links the two subjects. Mark Pedelti, professor of communication studies and anthropology and a resident fellow in the Institute of the Environment at the University of Minnesota, is indeed someone who has invested lots of his life towards combining these two categories. Pedelti has written books titled Ecomusicology, Rock, Folk, and the Environment, as well as Music, Nature, Place. Pedelti is quoted saying that he has come to realize just how important the arts and popular culture are in forming our conceptions of environmental issues, and that he has also learned how important listening is to solving environmental problems, taking in what scientists, artists, and everyone else has to say and teach on these matters, unquote. People like Pedelti are important to our society in connecting the ways in which music can help with sustainability and creating a world that will exist for future generations.